Welcome. I've got a clicker.
Press the arrow.
Oh, okay. Just a little bit of an introduction. I'm Kerryn Caulfield. I work with a company. We manage a number of associations. The common thread, excuse the pun, always feel difficult saying that, is that they're to do with fibre and textile. I won't go into it. We're here to talk about sustainability. Sustainability, I put a question mark there because what is sustainability and why do we do it? Sustainability is to preach to the converted. I mean, it's obvious we need to keep our air clean, we need to keep our waters clean, and the process of producing apparel or any textiles has had in the past pretty toxic elements. I can bore you silly with the history of the textiles and how they used to use real urine to make the dyes, but we won't go there. This is a famous picture. It's a Google picture of effluent coming out of a river in China from denim production. We don't want that. You're smiling. You've seen it before. This is another famous picture. It's of child labour in China, picking cotton. We don't want that to happen either. This is a report that came out of Turkey. Anyone that's got their head in the sustainability realm would know that they recently banned. There's been a big ban. They're phasing out sandblasting. This article said that 5,000 employees are affected. And of those, 46 have died as the results of the lung conditions that come from sandblasting genes. So when you see that kind of information, you know that sustainability is a no-brainer. And also sustainability, our landfills are filling up. They're filling up and filling up and filling up and filling up. You can see this is our own landfills. This is Australia's landfills. If we do nothing, we're going to be drowning in it by not too far away, 2021. If waste was to grow at 4.5%, we're almost going to be drowning in it. But there's a compelling reason to introduce sustainability into the way by which we do our everyday business. This is just an article that I found on the net. You could see that California, there's been a big recession in the US, but you could see that in California, textile waste grew 53% from 1999 to 2008, despite the recession. So textile waste is now currently running at between 4 and 5%. But despite the recession, consumerism in textiles has increased. And I'm looking here, I don't want to put a dampener on this wonderful event, but we have to be a bit clever about what we do. And of course, another reason why sustainability is important, we're all trying to reduce our global footprint. These are all pretty much no-brainers. Okay, sustainability. In our industry, it's becoming a mega trend. Sustainability is happening as a value system and a way by which to buy integrity. Our business is figuring out how it can integrate it through supply chains. The value in sustainability is locked up in effectively communicating it. The reward for the brand industry is in opening up new markets, new audiences, and improving a brand profile. The challenge is to determine how to extract a premium from it, or the eternal question, is sustainability just a license to do business? Are we going to get a premium for our products because they're produced sustainably, or is it because I just saw someone from our cricket team, or is it simply a license to operate? Okay, the mega trend. There's a wonderful quote that's etched above the doors. The giant Patagonia is the words, "There is no business to be done on a dead planet." I think that just encapsulates the compelling reason why we should be all sustainable. Sustainability is a company and an entity and a value system. There's just some descriptions there, and sustainability as a collective position. The collective position you've seen is a number of collective positions, sustainable collective positions coming through at the moment. There's the Sustainable Apparel Coalition that's been developed in the US. They've got together to say that they're going to be more sustainable. But then you can see the Dow Jones Sustainability Indexes were the first global indexes tracking the financial performance. Licensees presently manage over $8 billion US-based in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. So it is a mega trend. And they're all into it. All the big brands are into it. The challenge is, once again, excuse the pun, is to unstitch what's real and what isn't real. What's greenwash, what isn't greenwash. You can see these are all big brands. Puma's got a green brand now. Target's got a green brand. Timberland, Marks and Spencer's, Levi, Gap, Walmart, they've all got green brands and all presenting themselves as sustainable. Why? Well, we do know that being found out can kill a brand. This is a Kit Kat one, the recipe for forest destruction. The negative publicity against doing something wrong is pretty profound. These are the headlines that H&M, you've probably seen them. H&M's organic cotton fraud, testing lab finds genetically modified cotton in H&M. Why is H&M selling fake organic cotton? Other brands guilty of organic cotton. I googled H&M and fraud, and there was something like 4,000 Google entries. So doing it wrong, being unsustainable, can kill a brand. So the message I've always put out there is study your raw materials. But it's it's a pretty hard thing to do because when I did my fashion studies at school, we went into every fibre. I don't think they do that anymore. So that's just a list of some of the fibres. Each fibre you've got to go through, you've got to find out where it's sourced from, how it's farmed, how it gets to the place that it's in front of you, and ask the serious questions. I was asked to look at some of the natural fibres, but I've only got a couple here. There's hemp. There's some impediments to sourcing these products as well. While hemp is grown in Australia, it's not farmed in Australia for fibres. So as much as you want hemp in your product range, or look at hemp in your product range, it's got to be sourced from overseas. Once again, you've got to look at the way by which the product gets to your lab for you to be identified. What is its supply chain? Kapok is a beautiful fibre. I don't have them on today, but I've got a pair of jeans that's 50% kapok and 50% cotton. You can see this is pretty sustainable. It looks pretty good, doesn't it? It looks a lot better than that, and that's my view of some of the lyocell based, the cellulosic pulped rails are farmed through wood pulp that's farmed from rainforests. I won't go into every brand, but I'd rather that kapok tree than that. This is me a couple of months ago. I think it was just before Easter. This is our own cotton crop. We have the best cotton crop in Australia. I've studied it. I've been there. You can see this is in Narrabri. This is Australian cotton farmed by Australian farmers. Our own cotton crop is fantastic these days. We're using 86% less water than we did 15 years ago. They've done a lot of science. There's a lot of science behind it in the seeds, and they're Aussies. You know, there's Aussie families, and they're educated these days. That farm, the owners had a business degree and an ag degree, and that was the wife. And then the husbands just go, and they're about 36, they've put all their savings on the line and they're growing cotton, and it's brilliant. You can see Brendan there, this kind of investment, this is his investment. This is his family's investment. This is, I think it's a $300,000 machine, and they're out there, they're picking cotton. And behind it, 15 years ago, the Australian cotton industry formed what's called BMP, Best Management Practices. It's 15 years old. see that they've worked on less pesticides, less water. And the one good thing about ours is it's completely traceable. A real growth in Australian cotton around the world because it is traceable. And many of these fibres that we're working with are traceable. In comparison, we've got this Better Cotton initiative that's growing. I've got a real issue with it. The Better Cotton initiative, while it's, our cotton is being funded by Aussie farmers, this is being funded by money that's being invested from brands into, could you believe it, Switzerland. So they're transferring money from developed country into an association in Switzerland through an aid agency. And the membership fees are up to about $70,000. And according to the BCA website, members are expected to provide direct or indirect support to farmers as part of their membership commitment. So it's highly funded. Millions of dollars are being poured into this BCI. And BCI is to support cotton being grown in low labour cost countries and in undeveloped countries. The impetus worth knowing is that the BCI allows large international organisations to report against an ISO standard. And the model is one of large international brands or retailers pulling a cotton brand through the supply chain. There is evidence that some large retailers are insisting that BCI be sourced from India and Pakistan. These terms of trade validate the strategy to pull products through. Essentially, it's becoming a non-tariff barrier. So it's being enabled by money from big brands to allow them to buy cotton that we are of a standard that we would accept in this country. You can see here Adidas pulling Better Cotton through the supply chain. You can see here IKEA pulling Better Cotton through the supply chain. Marks and Spencer's pulling Better Cotton through the supply chain. This is cotton grown in standards much lower than we would expect in this country. You can see here. And to support these practices, I'm not saying it's greenwash. What I'm saying is, I'll leave it up to you to determine whether it's greenwash. What I'm saying is that what you have to do is study your supply chain to work out whether your supply chain are worthy of your brand. You can see that there's brand noise out there. Since they've put the Better Cotton initiative in place, the Cotton China have come out with a green logo. What's behind that green logo? Who's to know? There's bio cotton, there's organic cotton, there's probably about 20 other cotton brands out there, all that compete against the Better Cotton initiative because it's making traction. I put that image there because I wrote a paper about 18 months ago. I get inquiries from all over the world now about waste and textile waste going into landfill. I won't bore you too much on that because it is a little bit off brief, but it is part of the sustainability equation. And when we are talking about the fibres and the products that we're using in our designs, we have to remember where it's going to end up. It'll eventually end up in landfill. It'll end up in landfill either before it becomes a garment, they're the cuttings, after it becomes a garment. These are just some of the products that end up in landfill. But the facts are 4 to 5% of landfill is textile waste. So if you remember that 4 to 5% of landfill is textile waste, you're going to look at what you work with more stringently than you are at the moment, because you'll know that it's going to have to break down, and I suspect that natural fibres will come to fore. So I've just got some examples. I'll leave it to you guys. The option to regenerate textile fibres into for a secondary use once it's been used the first time is pretty powerful and compelling. Regeneration, as you can see, these are some of the initiatives. Post-industrial cotton trimming.
Attention visitors, during Tuesday Expo,
Talk over it.
you can win some fabulous lounge located at the rear of the hall in
They're making packaging out of textile waste. The Patagonia is a very important brand when it comes to sustainability. They've got their Common Threads program, which is a take-back program. It's essentially taking back polymers, polyester. It's much easier to recycle polymers. You can see that they say a closed-loop program. They have collection boxes in their stores, and this is another. Sorry, we're skipping a few here. Where am I going back to? Sorry. Pressing the down button. Patagonia is one of the benchmarks for sustainability in our industry. But when you look at the Patagonia and all the positive publicity it gets, really the program is about polymers. They haven't solved the issues of cotton and protein fibres yet. So recycling polymers is a no-brainer. I just think it's crazy that we're landfilling polymers in this country in textile waste. This is another one. This is a program, Bond Industries over in the US. They had a program where they had take-back boxes in universities. They took back old jeans and they're creating insulation. It was a partnership between Goodwill Industries and also Levi's. We tried to introduce this program into our country here, but our government didn't want to do anything on insulation after the pink bat debacle. So they declined recycling denim into insulation, but it's a good initiative because it was jointly between Levi, Goodwill, which is a charity, and also a non-woven manufacturer. You can see here they collected it, now they're installing it. Reebok, Nike's got their reuse a shoe program. They collect old shoes and they crush them up and they create playing surfaces with them. It's a very popular program. There's some criticism that it's not a closed loop program, so they're looking to, they're creating a secondary product. They're looking to redesign their product line so that they can be closed loop. Common, of course, as I said, the Patagonia one is really polymer bottles. It's much easier to recycle polymer, but this is an example in our country where an Australian country, Geofabrics, is creating is capping landfill in a geotextile, and they actually do it from recycled polymer bottles or PET bottles. So it's a real life example in this country. It's probably one of the few. Having said that, Joseph's here today. I have to profile our friends in Boris University who are creating ethanol from waste, and they're fueling their buses in. Joseph's been there, he's seen it, and it's because cellulose creates ethanol. And it's a real life program. We have nothing like this in this country, but I see it as the future. But it ain't easy being green. You've got to know your supply chain. And the good news is that business created this problem and business has the power to solve it. So I'll throw it over to the young guys. Thank you.
I don't know if I'll clash heads with Kerryn, but I use a lot of the so-called natural fibres in my designs, mainly because of their characteristics, such as the fabric usually comes from a tree, which uses a lot less water than cotton. That's one thing that I looked at, and I also looked at how you care for it, the breathability of the fabric, the durability, and also how long the colour lasts in the fabric. And one of the reasons why I guess organic cotton wasn't on the board for me was because it's not very versatile. For my designs it didn't really work out, and it's quite a go-to fabric for an eco-friendly designer. This fabric I've got here also carries the Eco-Tex 100 certification, which means it does look at the chemicals used in the process of developing the yarn from pulp from beech trees in Central and Eastern Europe. So there's no rainforest as far as I'm concerned, but yeah, we don't. I'm also very nervous about what exactly is Eco-Tex 100, and you start to hit walls when you keep looking further and further for answers, and then it gets just too technical, and we just got to take what we're given. And that does make me nervous, especially when I'm trying to preach my product to consumers and I say I've got all these fantastic certifications, but as Kerryn said, we really don't know too much more, and the best that I can do is just research as many third parties as possible, get reviews, just Google it and keep going, and eventually you develop an answer and that you can tell your customer, and you hope that can satisfy.
Hi everyone, I'm Keshia. I'm the brand manager for Cylk, and this is Emily, who's the designer for Cylk. So Cylk's been around since 2006, and we have a really big, we put a lot of importance on innovation, and particularly in sustainability. For us, it's really important in our design process all the way through manufacturing as well. We don't claim to be completely eco, because no one in the fashion industry really is, but it is important for us to apply sustainable practices such as using natural fibres wherever possible, and also capitalising on our strengths to ensure that we are constantly evolving and adapting these processes wherever possible without actually compromising the integrity of the brand and of our design aesthetic. So what we were going to talk today was a little bit different to what Alex has been talking about. We have dabbled in modal, lyocell, tensile based fibres, but we're predominantly known for our seamless innovation, which is also a sustainable practice, and incorporating in natural fibres into this practice wherever possible to ensure that obviously our design aesthetic is maintained, but that we are doing our bit, and yeah, wherever possible. So we're going to be discussing our bamboo fibres. Some of the samples that are going around are from our bamboo shapewear line, which is seamless. So the process is knitted on a Santoni machine, which Emily will discuss a little bit more about the process. But for us, it's about using, as Kerryn mentioned, going back to the fibre component. With seamless, one of the benefits is we can actually go right down to the fibre component of the blend as opposed to the fabric. So we can engineer the blend specifically for Santoni technology that we use to ensure that we're obviously shapewear. With our shapewear range has a purpose. We need the functionality of being a shapewear garment, but we've incorporated bamboo as a renewable resource to it's about 70%. So we try and use it as much as possible to achieve that. So do you want to?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to delve a little further into what makes Cylk unique and how we incorporate sustainable practices into our brand. I think, as Keshia mentioned, we're at the forefront of innovation, and where we specialise in is seamless technology. And just a little bit of background on that, if anybody isn't sure about what that is, it's knitted on an Italian Santoni machine, and it churns out tubular forms. So in terms of sustainability on this, it's there's a few reasons why it is considered sustainable. It requires minimum yarn consumption, and most of the fabric wastage occurs at the cutting stage. There's fewer product failures at the cutting stage, or when it's a cut and sew product, there's more seam failures. It's more energy efficient because the cutting, dyeing and sewing and knitting is all done in-house, so less transportation required. And obviously with the yarns that we develop in-house, we like to really push the boundaries in terms of our yarn and sustainability. And in cut and sew, it's a bit harder to develop yarns and knit yarns without product failure in bulk and keeping the yarn consistency. With regards to the yarn that we have been developing, we have a few really interesting ones on the horizon. We've got a recycled nylon 6.6, and that's really exciting for us because with seamless technology, it's very hard to steer away from using synthetic fibres such as nylons, because it really helps with the durability and the garment recovery and how it behaves, and obviously because of the jacquarding, and as you'll see with some of the garments being passed around there's some really incredible jacquarding that are engineered perfectly for each garment. So in order to achieve that, you need to include nylon. So we aim to offset this by using the recycled nylon 6.6. And obviously we wouldn't want to jeopardise the integrity of the garments, so we ensure that it passes all the tests and it has, it ensures all the quality and of a normal nylon. The normal nylon's processing stage, there's generally lots of wastage because the general manufacturing there's a lot of actual nylon yarn wastage, so we aim to incorporate that and actually use that up instead of purchasing new nylon. We have a few other yarns that we use, and one of them, which has become a Cylk signature, is the bamboo blend. And I know there's a lot of people dabbling in bamboo at the moment, and it's become a lot more common on the market. Though I suppose what sets us apart is that it is introduced in a seamless technology, and we use it because I suppose we wanted a substitute for cotton, and it's actually got the same characteristics, if not better. It has, it's got this amazing breathability. Its drape is beautiful, soft hand feel, and it's got micro-bacterial properties and moisture-wicking abilities. Have I missed anything? No. And on top of those characteristics, we obviously use it because of the environmental elements that it provides. And as bamboo is a crop, it's a very fast-growing crop, and it's a renewable source, and it requires minimal water to grow. And this is something we take into account in general when sourcing fabrications and yarns, because it's something we strongly believe in. But as Keshia said, we're not 100% eco, and we're not claiming that, but we do aim to make a difference in the fashion industry. And another exciting yarn that we've been using is for our actual cut and sew program, and it's a 100% spun silk. And this is actually created from, in the general silk spinning process, there's a lot of wastage in the yarn because of the short filament fibres. Get thrown out, and what we do is we take that yarn that's supposed to be waste and we turn it into something really beautiful. So it has a beautiful story. It's got a lovely background, and it's like the ugly duckling where it actually gets spun into a beautiful lustrous fabric. And so we've created our 100% spun silk, and unfortunately we don't have a sample to show you. You can see it on the website. So that's another exciting one on the horizon. And
in terms of sourcing what's coming up in the industry, we're always excited about new fibres and new ventures. As I said, we have doubled in modals, but we're always looking at capitalising on our strengths like seamless technology, and we have it's something we place a lot of importance on. So we do have weekly innovation meetings where we're always brainstorming. We've appointed an innovation manager who is responsible for running these meetings, and we're constantly looking at what's going on a global scale and how we can adapt these into our own practices moving forward. So we're really excited about developing some new things on the horizon, particularly in seamless, but also looking at ways to minimise waste in the cut and sew area as well.
Just one more thing to add with our design practices and how we sort of mix the sustainable element. Keshia's already mentioned, but we don't want to jeopardise the integrity of the brand. So we won't use something unless it has the properties that we want for the design or the garment. But obviously it tells a story as well. So we look at sustainability, but the garment is, at the end of the day, it has to meet the Cylk aesthetic, and we have a sort of brand motto, I guess you'd call it, where we call it MIL, and this is minimalist, innovative and luxe, and it has to fit those aesthetics before we introduce it as the spun silk. That wouldn't have been introduced unless it had a really beautiful luxury element to it. I guess for silk, we have the ability to design from the yarn and fibre stage, which is quite unique, whereas I suppose most fashion houses have to choose from fabrications that are available. Since we've got that ability, and we have a lot of resources that can help us develop the exact fabrication that we want. We can play with different weights, different textures and hand and feels, you know, so I suppose we're not limited in that sense when it comes to seamless. I suppose a little bit more limited, like Alex, in our jerseys and things like that. But again, we have a strong sourcing team and a manager of innovation who's brilliant for that sort of thing. Yeah, so I guess we design the range and how we want, and every now and then you come across hurdles, but generally, yeah, as designing from the yarn stage, I think we're not that limited. So it never really influences our design. We design based on what we see the season, where the season's going, and then the fabrications come to play as we, yeah.
I'll probably do the reverse, where I always have to go find the fabric first, and then I think of the best way to use that fabric. I mainly design basics, but have recently developed full ready-to-wear garments like outerwear and whatnot. But yeah, I went on about a year sourcing trip, mostly in America, but just meeting agents and mills and finding every fabric blend from corn and milk and sea cell and what have you. But it's just fabrics I don't understand enough about and feel comfortable enough to use. And so yeah, I started looking at regenerated fibres such as cupro and things like that, which I mainly use for linings, and have also developed a few jackets out of. But mainly I focus on modals, tencels, lyocells and things like that. One of the best benefits about using tencel is it comes from the eucalyptus tree, and the eucalyptus tree grows on non-arable land, which means the land cannot be used for any other human development purposes. It also requires hardly any water to grow. So I think it's one of those perfect fabrics that you can use. It breathes perfectly, just like bamboo. However, I've never actually used bamboo before. I don't trust it. There's a lot of hearsay about its properties, and it loses all of its said properties by the time it comes into a fibre. And as far as I'm aware, I haven't come across any that hold any certification, which I'm happy with. And that's why I don't use certain fabrics, and I use other fabrics instead. I've also investigated, I guess you call them natural fabrics, such as pea silk, which PETA certifies. It comes out of India, and it's also organic as well, and it allows the silkworm to actually grow and be released, and they capture the cocoon, so they don't kill any of them. And something like 15,000 or 1,500 silkworms are killed just to make a blazer. So I look at those things as well, but that's like 1 or 2 products a season. But yeah, the masses are mainly tencel blends with like cashmere or silks, things that make them extra durable, soft, and yeah, comfy to wear.
I might open it up for questions at this point. Does anyone have anything they'd like to put to either the designers or to Kerryn? No?
Got silk garments here. What sort of garments are you actually out of the silk? They're cut and sew pieces. They're not done on the seamless machine. Just sort of jersey style, so really loose draped cardigans and dress styles. And then they're all sort of oversized because of the beautiful luster and drape. It's quite heavy as well. The spun silk naturally has sort of a more slubby and coarse structure. It's really good for the winter that we're using it for, because we can do lots of drape with it.
Any other questions?
A question for Alex. So very impressive what you've done with your business, Alex, but how have you funded it? Do you receive assistance for all the research you've done, or how does it work economically for you?
It's been hard. I work like another job, 50 hours a week right now, and that sort of funds it. I have increased my customer base up to about 35 wholesalers now in Australia, and there's a few in the US, which is good. And yeah, I guess you don't say no, you just keep going. In terms of my like what your parents give you, what do you call, like shares and whatnot, and I sold all of those, and so I guess I believed in it. But it's like having a child when you have a business, like you want to give it everything, the best education, the best food and everything like that. So that's how I treat it, and I don't really have a life anymore. But yeah, that's it's a sad story behind it, but hopefully it'll get there and I can start really making it blossom. But I have actually received a a couple of grants. I received the EDMG, which is more of a reimbursement from Austrade, and that was mainly to recover costs associated with expanding the brand into Japan and the UK and the US, and I recently received a very nice grant from them from Oz Industry, and that is mainly concerned with my website and how I can basically develop that and make it incredibly competitive, and I've only just received that, so I cannot wait to actually get that started.
Nasr hosted a think tank on sustainability a couple of months ago now, and we came to the conclusion that what we don't want in this field is for people to think that one choice is wrong and another choice is right. What we know about sustainability today, we're going to know more about tomorrow. So it's not a blame game. It's not a game about certain choices are wrong and are right. And I think I've had this discussion a number of times with Lara. You can't say that. What you can do is put your brain to work and look through your whole supply chain and look at the products that you're dealing with and the inputs of those products and ask questions. And it will become clear as you go along that we don't want this to be a game about one practice is right and one practice is wrong. So the choices that Alex has made, he's put a lot of thought and work into, and we're the last to say that this is right and this is wrong, although I wouldn't choose those fibres, but you know.
I think the interesting thing, having the contrast, obviously the girls and Alex use very different fibres that work with their design practice. They have both very different design aesthetics, and they use fibres that can work for both of them. So I think that's really interesting, having the contrast between the two of you. You're obviously using probably opposing fabrics on scale, but obviously you're making it work, and they're a much more viable alternative than a lot of the other fibres that are out there. So that's what's really interesting about it. But I think Georgie had a question.
Hi all. Yes, well done, all of you. It's amazing effort. I know myself, I've had a small label before and tried to have it sustainable, just simply by manufacturing locally. So that was my big thing on trying to be sustainable when I had my business. I didn't even start exploring the fabric side of things, but yeah, it was a great question about how you got started, Alex. I'd just like to know how you girls have started. Is it your business, or just give us a bit of a background on the business itself?
Sure. Well, we started in 2006. We have a parent company who's been in the fashion industry for 16 years, so we're very fortunate to have quite a solid team of people behind us as well. We do share a lot of resources with our parent company. In terms of like the QA department, obviously we're very place a lot of importance on the quality of our fabrics, so that's very important for us too. The label originally started because we wanted to take innovation and sustainability to the next level from what was happening on the Australian retail landscape at the time. So Cylk began as a means of pushing the boundaries in terms of sustainable yarn development and seamless innovation, which was what our parent company specialises in as well. So we have been fortunate.
Did any of you actually consider Australian wool as a fibre that you might use? Australian wool? Yeah.
We have used Australian merino wool for one of our blends. We've used it in the past as a blend. It's blended with a few other fibres as a high performance fibre, so we have dabbled in it in the past. And it would be something, at the moment we're in the process of trying to develop it into more of a seamless aesthetic, as that's what we specialise in. So in the past we've done it on a circular knit, which hasn't actually been done in the fashion industry before. It's primarily, the particular yarn we used was a high performance yarn used in activewear, so we've adapted that into a more fashion component. So it's a work in progress that we're hoping to develop. Obviously making it our own within the Cylk aesthetic is important too. So.
Jake. Yeah, I do use wool in the winter months, and but I have to only use certified organic wool, and as far as I'm aware, there are no suppliers in Australia. However, the wool I probably buy is Australian. It just gets shipped all around the world, and by the time I receive it, it just ends right back up here, which I'm paying about $20 a metre for freight, and that really, really sucks. So I don't know what happened to our industry, but apparently it dissolved some time ago, and there's nothing more we can do about it. Yeah, that part of it, the part that matters. My wool in particular, this coming winter wool is actually sourced from the US, and I'm not actually sure where the wool originates from, because as far as I'm aware, the wool industry doesn't exist in the US. They don't grow at the same time as we do. I was speaking to Stuart over at GOTS, but we're not really sure. They've got a very small wool industry, so I'm unaware of where it actually comes from. But it does hold the certification, so that covers, you know, breeding the animal, what it eats, how it's treated, all the way through to me receiving the fabric and on selling. So otherwise, most of the man-made cellulose-based fibres come from Japan or France. Japan holds one of the highest standards in their textile industry in terms of the processes that their fibres go through, so I'm quite happy there. And the ones from France are certified by Ecotex 100, and the Cylk comes from India, which is certified by PETA and GOTS as well, so I'm happy there. None of my fabrics come from China. I have looked at some fabrics from Taiwan, which are mainly Serona, and 35% of that fabric is considered sustainable, which isn't enough to cut it, so I don't care about it. However, it does have natural stretch, so it does have some interesting properties that you could use maybe for swimwear or, I don't know, going to the gym or something like that. But otherwise, I've looked at leathers. I don't know how sustainable they are, but leathers, you know, last forever, so I'm pretty happy. It can be cut down, recycled, reused, so for me it sort of ticks a box, but it's also the tanning process, and that I'm just unsure about, and chroming and everything. You can do vegetable dye, but there's no certification on dyes, so that also leaves me up in the air, so there should be a body that's certified dye.
Also, our wool is Australian, but it's spun in Germany because of the technology that's used to spin the yarn. And then our recycled nylon sourced from China, with so obviously with the bamboo as well. That's from China as well, with the Ecotex certification that Alex mentioned as well. So,
just with seamless, it's why we do produce in China is because Australia doesn't have the capacity to do the volumes that we do, and they're not as specialised with the seamless and toning machine. So that is what we're looking at, doing it onshore, but until we find, you know, yeah, yeah.
Again, it comes back to the, you know, compromising the design integrity of the brand. So until we have somewhere to manufacture in Australia, we'd love to, but yeah, it's just not viable at the moment.
Round of applause to the panellists. It's really interesting.